Europe and some parts of Asia have been heat-stricken for the past 3 months, killing people and destroying properties through bushfires. Temperatures have been hovering around and above 30 degrees Celsius, and summer has been longer than expected. Why don't we find out how bad the situation is and how some of the affected countries in Europe especially have been dealing with it? We go to our partners DW. Thomas Sparrow is political correspondent. He joins me from the German capital, Berlin. Thomas, it's good to have you, and I hope you're not heating to death. How bad is the heat wave, and do we have statistics of how many people have been casualties of this rather unusual weather?
Well, hello, Gifty, from a very hot Berlin. It's now 36 degrees here. In fact, it's climbing up to 37 or 38 degrees, according to some estimates. And this is something very unusual for Germany, something very unusual for other parts of Europe as well. I was, in fact, reading that in Spain, for example, the hottest temperature a few days ago was 46 degrees. Wow. So you can imagine what it's like for a continent that in many parts is not used to having these extreme high temperatures, and that obviously is creating a lot of problems in many parts of the continent. Wildfires, for example, being a particularly big problem. In fact, if you look at Greece, for example, Greece had been suffering from these wildfires that also killed many people. And then obviously you have a situation that if the weather is so hot and it's so dry, can also create health problems, especially for vulnerable groups like children or like the elderly. So those are all issues that politicians and other authorities are trying to deal with here. And then there's also the very important issue of crops. And that's something that's worrying many people here, the fact that many crops are obviously not as good as they should be because of the weather conditions. And that's something that, for example, the Farmers Association here in Germany said that they said they need desperately money to make sure that the losses are not so bad. In fact, they were asking for around 1 billion euros to try and make sure that the situation could be improved. But it's also important to say, Gifty, that although some have been suffering, although some have been mentioning that they have problems, there are other people who have been benefiting from this heat wave. For example, beer producers. And they have even said that there's a shortage of bottles because they've been selling much more than what they had expected. So those are all issues that are affecting this particular period here in Germany, here in Europe. It is extremely unusual, and one where everyone, those that benefit, but also those that are negatively affected, have had to adapt.
Now, if there's beer shortage in Germany, that is certainly big news. But this is not the first time that such heat waves have hit the world, and indeed Europe. What are experts saying is the cause, Thomas?
Well, what they're saying is precisely what you stressed, that this is not the first time that such a heat wave happens, and it probably will not be the last time that such a heat wave happens, that as climate change continues to have an impact on the environment, these are all weather patterns that different industries and politicians and the normal just citizens around the world will have to get used to that as well. Having very hot summers, for instance, where crops get damaged, where there are health problems attached to that. Basically, that there is an increased need for politicians to keep pressure, trying to get those long-term solutions. There's obviously that increased need as well from industries, that they have to adapt to all these different conditions. And I'll just give you an example. Obviously, the wine industry seems to be also benefiting, at least in part. It was reported that German wine growers were harvesting early due to the heat wave, but only a few months ago in other parts of Europe they were suffering because of storms. So you can see that all these patterns are creating the need for everyone to adapt to these new circumstances that in many parts of Europe are extremely unusual.
Are there any estimations or expectations of how soon this heat will end?
Well, it depends where you look, where you go to, because obviously here in Germany they've been saying that in the next few days temperatures could drop, that there could be storms, that there could be rain, which is something that many people here are actually looking forward to. It's rather unusual for people here in summer to hope for rain, but that is something that people are actually hoping for. But the big question is how long this will last in general, because if the situation becomes cooler here in Germany, it does not necessarily mean that it will be cooler in other parts of Europe. So if you look at it as a whole, there are still many questions as to when this could actually end and what the impact of all this could be on a short, on a medium, and also in the long term.
So whilst people are waiting, how are they coping?
Well, everyone is basically trying to keep indoors. Germany is not a country where air conditioning is a norm, so they've been trying to buy fans. They've been trying to stay cool, stay indoors. There have been heat warnings that have been issued, trying to advise people what to do under such conditions, trying to keep hydrated, trying to keep cool also at night. There have also been warnings for, obviously, industries that are negatively impacted by all this. So essentially, it's been a matter of informing people about what the negative and what the positive, if there are any consequences of this heat wave, might be. But for Germans, obviously, a rather unusual situation. Many obviously feel happy that it's so sunny and warm, and they have been going to the lakes around Berlin or to the sea in the north. But I think everyone here is also aware that, okay, they might be enjoying the sun, but it's also coming with a lot of problems for many people in the country and in other parts of Europe.
Thomas, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed, and I do hope that you keep cold so you don't burn out. Very well. Thomas Barrow is political correspondent with our partners DW, joining us all the way from Berlin in Germany. Well, here in Africa and in Ghana, heat is pretty normal for us. But if you're traveling to any parts of Europe, be warned, you know what you're to expect when you get there. This is still The Pulse with me, Gifty, and up here.